Hello everyone, Emily from Emilysvisions here. Bit seizure-ish today, so please forgive me if I sort of zone out, because I never know when my seizures would come, and maybe they might come in the middle of one of these, who knows, one day. Anyway, today I just wanted to talk about epilepsy and emotions, particularly other people's perception of emotions. I have found, as a temporal lobe epileptic, that I have often been labelled as being a very emotional person. And it's interesting because temporal lobe epilepsy is epilepsy in the temporal lobe of the brain. So they're grand mal seizures, and they take over the whole of the brain. But simple partial seizures and complex partial seizures tend to focus on one area of the brain. So it's interesting when I've talked to other people who have this sort of epilepsy, because depending on where they have their brain injury, their seizures can be very different. So for example, they can have ones that are quite visual, so that they see strange things, and they can have ones that are about memory, so they trigger memory things. And other people, like me, have ones in the area of my brain that controls my emotions. So this means that during the phase of my seizure, I can actually appear to be quite emotional because my emotions are triggered. But it's interesting, they can be like, I can be like terribly scared about things, like normal things like a bottle of water. You know, I can find that scary because my brain is triggered to be scared. So if there's nothing wrong with the water, and after my seizure has finished, I won't be scared of it anymore. But people then do say to me or tell me that I'm an emotional person, or they see, if they see me in that state and I don't have a carer around to explain, you know, they sometimes think I have a really big issue with something that actually it's not my fault. It's a physical injury, and it's part of my seizure, and I just can't cope, and I can't be judged based on who I am during that time. So I'm a bit upset about that, because it's really not fair for me to be labelled like that, and I've been labelled by, it's detached me from, you know, people that I could have built good relationships with, which includes like my peers, especially when I was younger, also members of my family. So it's made my life quite difficult, and actually probably has given me more things to be emotional about, ironically. But I'm not a very emotional person, especially when it comes to things that matter. I tend to be quite level-headed about things. I tend to communicate fairly evenly if people let me, and actually, to be honest with you, I tend to see lots of people's different points of view. I think mainly because I've got a brain that changes so much, I think it helps me to see things from many different angles. So even if somebody wants to do something that doesn't particularly suit me, I have a tendency to sort of try and see their point of view, and also to protect their right to do what they like, so long as it doesn't hurt anyone, and so long as they're clearly communicating with people, so people don't get upset. Sometimes I'm not always available, as I say, because I have a seizure and I can't control my seizures. My neurologist tried to control my seizures with the medication, but it didn't work. So I'm just stuck with that. It's hard having hidden disability, particularly one that affects you on some days than others. And sometimes there can be an extra problem, because I can have a seizure during a stressful situation or an emotional situation. Then, of course, it's easy for people to interpret the fact that that maybe I'm having an emotional reaction, and thinking that it's directly related to the stressful situation. I think this is quite interesting, because I do tend to enjoy interesting and anthropological things. Studying humans, trying to understand how my brain works, has made me interested in that sort of thing. So sometimes I can be quite outspoken about those things, and I think probably over time people who campaign about things have had that experience themselves. Like, for example, feminists, when women started suggesting that, that maybe they could be able to vote too, maybe that would be a good idea, because, women have got opinions that are relevant to the world. People were like, oh dear, we don't, where's that coming from? Why has she got such strange ideas? And if she got slightly passionate about it, people would say, oh dear, here she goes off again, she's going off again on her topic, she gets terribly emotional about these things, doesn't she? Whenever somebody's doing something or saying something that doesn't really go along with the status quo and what society sort of, actually concretely, expects, because actually we live in a world full of expectations. People expect us to act certain ways, at all sorts of different stages in our lives, and with well-developed brains, I think we humans have got, the ability to, think far beyond that, and it's always a pleasure, isn't it, to see someone, using that facility to create new things and new solutions to old problems, I think the other thing is, because my brain is damaged, it doesn't really work the same way as other people's. So that means actually one thing is I'm not very easily manipulated. So because it's easier to manipulate someone when you know the sort of reactions they're going to have to something. But I'm spontaneous because of my seizures, and also because I've had epilepsy since I was 8. That's made me think in more spontaneous ways too. So I think sometimes I get labelled as emotional or making a fuss about things by people who find that they can't actually manipulate me. They can't make me do what they wanted me to do, what normal people, and respond in, what they would call a normal way. And so then they get frustrated with that, and frustrated with me, and they tell other people as well that I'm an emotional person who can't be controlled, or can't do what is right, which is all. When somebody says something's right, it always means what they think is right, what they would prefer that person to do. But I don't tend to lose my temper. I mean, I've been in some pretty intense situations. I think everybody has times like that, turbulent times in their lives, and I've had turbulent times in my life. But I've never hurt anyone. I haven't really kind of, not physically. I've never lashed out really at people. I'm fairly calm, and to be honest with you, with my fear that I get a lot with my epilepsy, in a fight I am more likely to run away. Or like one time when I was being beaten up by a gang, my response was to curl up into a ball. So I don't really, with the fight and flight, I don't tend to do the fight. I don't tend to bother. I mean, so I just wanted to say really today that, being different is scary. It's scary for me, and it's scary for others that I'm different. But I don't really feel I should be judged or labelled, for something I can't control, when I am trying my best. And it's upsetting. It's upsetting when people can use the fact that I appear emotional to, sway people against me, and judge me and separate me off from activities and things. It seems ridiculous because I'm lucky. I'm not in a wheelchair, for example. I'm physically disabled. There should be, well, in theory, things should be more accessible to me. But I'm finding, as a result of my disability, that even though it's hidden, because it still doesn't go along with people's expectations, there still is an accessibility problem. So that's what I wanted to say today. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and my confidence is increasing with these things, so thank you for listening. Bye.